And we are back on WGN-TV Political Report. For the first time in more than 2 decades, Illinois Secretary of State's office is up for grabs. Democrat Jesse White announced his retirement last year that opened up the floodgates for political hopefuls who want to get in front of voters statewide. Now, on the Republican side, 2 candidates are vying for the party's nomination. The first, State Representative Dan Brady. He's represented Central Illinois, including part of Bloomington Normal, for more than 20 years. He serves on the House Republican leadership team and has long served as a funeral director in his community. Now, Brady says his whole career has led him to this race.
I've aspired to. It's not an office I've been recruited for. I have looked at this office and interacted and worked with Secretary White on a number of initiatives, not only from my days in county government when I was a McLean County coroner, primarily into organ and tissue donation, defensive driving for our young drivers, but as I became representative, I started crafting legislation and working with Secretary White and his office on a number of initiatives like organ and tissue donation, as I said, distracted driving, insurance issues. Most recently last year, legislation dealing with defensive driving courses for seniors online and being able to get credit hours and help with their insurance premiums. That got me, I think, really involved in the overall operations of the office. And that's something that I really feel that I have experience with that will be very valuable to represent the people in Illinois.
So looking at your website, you talk a lot about those items and streamlining the Office of Secretary of State. There are services online now and all that. So what is it that Secretary White has yet to do that you need to do or has to be improved?
Well, I think that you look at the travels, my travels across the state of Illinois, and what you continuously hear is the driver services and the long lines and the waiting that's going on in those services. How do we streamline those services, cut the wait times, advance technology, and then also look at ways in which we can develop better cross-training and fully staff those facilities across the state of Illinois. Now, this office does much, much more than just driver services in Illinois. In fact, this office touches more daily lives than any other constitutional office in the state of Illinois. It just happens to be the biggest area is driver services with the Secretary of State's office that most people come in contact with. And so there's lots of room for improvement there. And it's not just COVID that's certainly torpedoed things over the last few years, but it's also the technology side of things that needs to be improved upon. And quite frankly, as I said, staffing those facilities fully, which hasn't been done in years.
Let's talk about voting. And unlike most states, I think you always like to make it clear, the Secretary of State of Illinois is not involved in voting the way it is, that office is in other states. But that being said, you've talked about wanting to take a step to offload, I think that's your word, the state's motor voter program to local authorities. And Democrats are attacking you for that, saying that's sort of a Trump-type approach because you're restricting the opportunity for people to register.
Well, first off, far be it from someone to get something wrong who's talking about you and attacking you about something. I know that's something new and different, but what I have said is that the Secretary of State's office, by motor voter, by federal mandate, has a limited role when it comes to registering people to vote in the state of Illinois. I happen to believe that the local election authorities are the best suited to register people so it's fair across the board and the grass is cut even. However, one of the things that we could do, much like it's being done right now with your driver's license and your signature coming from your driver's license that goes to automatically the voters, the local voter registration areas, so they can compare those signatures on election day from an election judge sitting at that table to someone who comes and says, this is my card. And we've got people trying to compare signatures who have no experience whatsoever in signature writing whatsoever. So why don't we take the driver's license picture or an ID picture, which automatically, if you renew a FOID card, goes to that, send the same picture digitally to the election authority, so on voting day, they can simply look at a picture of who the individual is standing before them. That would be a great way for voter integrity. But a federal mandate is the motor voter. So we're going to have to register folks at motor voters facilities throughout the state of Illinois, and that's what is going to happen. I have said we're not going to change that. What I've said is we are going to try to have better integrity and voter protection and secure more elections in the state of Illinois, because quite frankly, the Secretary of State is the one responsible for certifying the elections in the state of Illinois.
Let me follow up with that a little bit, because you've said that you've heard a lot of concerns from Illinoisans about election integrity. Correct. We sort of have seen throughout the country, really, there has not been any real fraud that's been reported. What is your sense of the level of integrity among our Illinois elections?
I think it could be improved. I'm an individual who's come from my first time running for State House, a state representative, on a recount. And so I learned quite a bit about the process itself, securing of the ballots, things that are involved in the process. And we can improve upon that. And now, especially in this day of technology, we can do more, but we also have to protect people's personal identities and what goes on. And we know that when the first vote by mail was rolled out a few years ago, the Secretary of State's office didn't do such a stellar job of working with local election authorities and sending out what was a very, very confusing letter to the electorate.
One of your priorities, you said, is dealing with distracted driving. So we already get tickets for that kind of thing. What can you do in the Secretary of State's office to fix that problem?
Well, I think what you can do, and what I'd like to do, is partner with our schools, whether it be public schools, private schools, or independent driving schools. And we look at those schools and we say, you know, how can we have a better curriculum? And if you look at some of the programs going on right now, for instance, just recently in Illinois, in Mossville, Illinois, we had the Tire Tracks driving program that actually takes students out, has them driving their own vehicle, the car they're most likely to drive, and learn behind the wheel of what a 2,000-pound vehicle does or doesn't do when you get yourself in trouble and how it reacts. That's the type of curriculum I'd like to partner with in the Secretary of State's office. I'd also like to bring the Secretary of State Police back into the school from the standpoint of being able to talk to the students to let them know what happens when a DUI situation occurs or a drug-induced driving ticket of some kind, and actually understand what it means to have administrative hearings and what can happen to you and what can happen to your record. And also talk to them about what a title is. What's a title of a vehicle mean? What's the lien mean when you get that to the lien holder? All those type of things are very, very important for our young drivers. And I think we could do a better job from a curriculum standpoint of the Secretary of State's office being more involved.
Your opponent in this case, former prosecutor, U.S. attorney, and has sort of unofficial endorsements by a lot of GOP folks. Both of you are focused a bit on corruption with regard to the Central Campaign. What would you do to deal with corruption from the Secretary of State's office?
Well, I think the first thing you do is certainly give the heir apparent to employees in that office, who are a lot of very dedicated folks, is that we not only believe that you are doing a good job, but we want to get your input. We want to seek your advice of what you think we can make this office better and how, because they're the ones in the front line. And so as far as ethics and related operations of the office, that comes from the top down. I think in my years in the legislature and being part of a number of ethics initiatives would be things that I would apply to the office. But you know, you can't regulate everything. You can't, from a legislative standpoint, legislate ethical behavior. That has to come with better background checks of employees and making sure that that individual understands, as I've talked about cross-training, what their role is in an operation of an office and who does what next to them. It would be very helpful.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from Brady's opponent, John Milhiser. That's next. Stay with us.